The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, Conda, power. I love the power. I love the power.
G'day everyone, Macca 19 here, and you are listening to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast, coming to you live once again on Port Fan Radio. And look, tonight, for the first time as official co-host, we have Portia.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's obviously going to be a really big change from having Rick here, so I'll certainly try to talk about what I ate today at some point.
That's it. And no Jasper Pittard talk.
No, of course not.
Absolutely not. And back on the podcast this week, we have Janus.
Hello.
Welcome back.
It's lovely to be here. With such
a lovely
company.
evening.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Look, before we get on to the preview of the GWS game on Saturday, we'll talk about the news that Brendan Archie has signed a one-year extension on his contract, taking him to the end of 2016. How do we feel about that? Are we happy with that?
Yeah, definitely, I would say. 1 year, I've never have any real problems with one-year extensions this late in the year. That's pretty solid. So if he's through to the end of 2016, then that just makes sense. I don't think we could... I think he's one of those players in the category where he's young enough that if we delisted him and drafted again, we probably wouldn't get anyone better. So it's worth keeping in the side, and I think he's got a bit of potential to fill roles that we're a bit weak in right now, such as, I suppose, more that type of player we missed with Polak missing most of the year. Potentially a forward moving midfielder, fringe midfielder. So I think that could be, I think it's a good move. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yes, I concur. It's also not just a 1 year contract. I think I read today, someone posted that it's got a performance clause in it to extend it for 2 years. So it's like a 1+1. So it should be good. And he's shown more than some of our other fringe players in the limited game time that he's had. And he gets a game this week, so he's got another chance to impress and show us what he's got. But he's done pretty much all that you could ask for him for someone who was almost on the verge of being delisted or wasn't getting a game for the Magpies. Was it a year ago or a couple of years ago? And then coming back to actually get a first game for the club this year and continuing on. It shows that we can develop some players from where they were before. Yeah,
he's almost there. He's got some of the tools to make it in the AFL. Obviously, he's got fantastic handball. He's great in contested situations. He's a great clearance player, but he really does need to add maybe another string to his bow in terms of his ability to play somewhere else. We all know he sort of struggles on a forward flank or a forward pocket as that sort of quasi sort of tall / medium forward, but he's probably going to have to learn how to play that position if he's going to get sort of regular, maybe 20 games a year sort of footy. But look, I think it's a great extension. I'm a big fan of Arch, and hopefully he can come in this week and perform.
Yeah, hopefully. I think if we're looking at an ideal position for him, it doesn't really exist now, but he's close to being, I suppose, halfway between wing and centre. Like, you'd really just want him going along there, and rather than necessarily being the player that kicks the goals or marks on the forward 50, but being the deliverer, basically going along that flank or hopefully close to the centre square and through there. I think it's probably a better spot for him, where his vision and handball will probably have the maximum penetration and add to our attack, which obviously we're quite focused on. I think that's probably a good role for him to going forward.
Yeah, it'd be good with the overlap run.
Yeah, yep.
That's it. Probably needs to improve his foot skills a little bit, but if he can do that, there's no reason why he can't play a lot of games next year, I would think.
Well, foot skills are confidence, aren't they? So we'll see how that goes.
So where do you think he sits in the more young Archie triangle of doom?
What does that mean?
Triangle of doom.
Nearly there, but maybe not sort of inside mids.
Oh, okay. Well, the one thing that's really on his side is he's on the right side of 25. If he's on the wrong side, then you start saying, well, got to go. I would say, but we seem to give extensions to those sorts of players in recent years, so I'm not too sure. But I think he's in a strong position. He's certainly on the up at this point, and I think he'll get games next year, and if he doesn't, then it'll be because probably either we brought in someone excellent or we kept someone that we should have probably moved on that might be a bit past and not going to play in our next premiership.
Yeah, I'd put him probably just because he's got that youth behind him.
Yep.
Probably at the top, but that's the only reason why. You know, the other guys should be showing more at this stage of their careers, but Archie has got that youthful exuberance on his side, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know that the exuberance really matters, but just the fact that if you're going to invest in a player, you want to be a player that's going to be around for a while, and he can be around for a while. And we don't even need him to be the top player or anything like that, but if he's a solid 10 to 20 player, preferably, I suppose we really want to look at 5 to 15 if we're looking at long term, then that's really all we could possibly expect, I would say. And if we get that, I think we're pretty happy. So,
yeah, I like it. So, on that note, let's talk about the game this weekend. It's obviously Port play Greater Western Sydney this Saturday at Adelaide Oval. We've got a 3-1 win-loss record. Last time we met was round 7 last year, a 35-point win. So it's quite a long time between matches between Port and GWS. First question I've got is how much of GWS have you seen this year?
I've been to one game. Not very interesting.
Fair enough. Who was that against?
Melbourne. So obviously I was going for a really blockbuster game, that one.
Yep.
Yeah, look, I think that GWS, as a Port Adelaide fan, when you go and see GWS play, you've been there before, and it was in 1997, 1998, and they're just way off it, really, in some respects. Sometimes they show some really good signs, and then they just go back to how do we play football again, and I think we've just seen that consistently all year. Inconsistently all year, but consistently inconsistent. So how they're going to turn out, hard to know. Their season's over, but so is ours. So I guess we'll see both teams probably have a good crack at it. But I think that if one side gets a long way ahead, then that'll be the end of it. So, yeah, we'll see.
Janus?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of them, so I can't make a comment on how they play it.
Oh my God. How did you get selected for this preview?
It's a wonderful thing that you're on this podcast then.
Yeah, well, there you go. No,
have you seen Port play this year?
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, I have.
There you go.
I've played some good stuff, but mostly bad.
Yeah. But GWS, it's very hard to get excited about them. And I saw the club put out their email today saying, hey, if we get 40-something thousand, we'll maintain our average for crowds and it'll look good for us. And it sort of seems like the strongest motivation that anyone could have to go to the game this week. I don't think that there's going to be much beyond that, but we'll see. Let's see. Hopefully, I guess if we have guys like the young guys come on, then that'll be really good. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've probably seen maybe 6 or 7 GWS games this year, and they sort of range between looking absolutely fantastic and lightning quick and pretty poor. I mean, they've maybe only really had the one poor defeat this year against West Coast earlier in the season, but they've been reasonably competitive all year. They've only won 3 of their last 7 games, I think. So whether they make finals or not, I think it may hinge on this week for them. I mean, if they win, they're right back in the mix again. I kind of like the way that they play. They're young, they're quick, they're quite skillful. I guess talking about the teams, I mean, they're missing their 3 best midfielders this week in Mumford, Shield and Treloar. They're also missing Cornelio, so they're missing quite a lot of their their inside work there, and also they're running carry, quite a lot of skills and some goals there. But they've still got Callum Ward, they've still got Ryan Griffin, they've still got Toby Green, Devon Smith, so they're still going to have quite a few talented players out there in the middle. Yeah,
definitely. And I suppose that they're certainly good enough that we, Port Adelaide, obviously need to take them pretty seriously if we want to try and win. They've got a lot of talent there, a lot of latent potential, and it's just really about them gelling as a team and doing that consistently. So, but realistically, that's kind of what we're at too. So, it's a bit of a grab bag, and I guess we'll see what we end up with.
Yeah. So they're missing Scully, Cornelio, and Treloar this week. They're out of the team with injuries. In comes the next big thing: Jack Steele, Thomas Buggs back in, and Zach Williams as well. So 3 Smalls come back in. Yeah. And then we look at our team, and we've made quite a lot of changes, 5 changes. Some of them, I guess, a bit controversial. We say goodbye to Andrew Moore, Sam Cahoon, Matty Loby's out. Some would be pretty happy with that, I imagine, and Aaron Young as well. But the one that baffles me quite significantly is Tom Cleary, who was our best player last week, our only competent defender, and we decide to drop him when we're facing Jeremy Cameron, Cameron McCarthy, John Patton, Rory Lobb up forward. I just don't understand it.
You'd have to hope it was tactical, really, wouldn't you? Or there's an injury they're trying to hide or something like that. But I guess when you see these sorts of mystery changes, it's either a sign of genius or idiocy. And I guess we'll see what it is on Saturday. But maybe we're just trying to run. We're just trying to play that running game and just rely entirely on winning it out of the midfield and hoping that their key forwards don't really matter because they're not getting supply. I guess that is really all we can hope for with the team we've named. Yeah.
It's a great way to celebrate a young player's best on-ground performance is to make sure they play against Glenelg on Friday night. That's thanks very much. Wouldn't be too happy about that.
Well, you've got to take Glenelg seriously. I think obviously Cleary has been pretty good, but I think he knows he's a developing player, and obviously I guess that maybe at some level there's something they want him doing that he's not doing. I don't know what that is, but I guess that's comes down to team play. So maybe he's playing his own game or something like that. I really don't know, but I'm sure there's a reason, and I'd love to know what it is. It's one of those times you'd really like to sit in the selection table and hear what's going on, because it doesn't make a lot of sense from the outside unless there's something that we don't know. Really, I think that's what it comes down to. There must be something we don't know.
Yes. Yeah, I can just intimate exactly what you just said, because I can't think of any reason why you would drop him after that performance and bring back Tom Janus of all people to, I guess, take his place on the side when he wasn't playing that well, and apparently he wasn't playing that well in the SNFL. And in the selection thread on the board, all I'm trying to do is come up with some sort of reason as to why anyone would do that, But I can't think of it other than the run factor, like pressing forward, like into the midfield and stuff. And maybe he wasn't providing that, and we want to go for that complete and utter domination in terms of, we'll run off these defenders run off these forwards because they're not mobile, and we'll burn them that way because if they mark the ball, they're going to kick it goals anyway. So we'll just go completely our way, you know what I mean? Rather than trying to negate what they're trying to do, just go completely the opposite way and just go full on. But then you hear Hinkley tonight on the radio and he's talking about how it's supposed to be team defence, and that's what we want to be known for. So you don't know what the thing is, but unfortunately we're not on the selection panel, so I guess we'll never know unless we corner one of the selection people and ask them to tell us the truth.
I've got two thoughts on that.
The thing you really want to do when you're playing footy and you want sort of pace and endurance and lots of run and carry from defence is dropping Tommy Cleary, who's in the third or fourth fittest player at the club, and bringing in Tommy Janus. That's exactly what you want to do, isn't it?
So that was the first thing I wanted to bring up, is that I think I'm the last person alive that still likes Tom Janus as a player. I don't know why everyone's turned on him so horribly, but also we're bringing Janus in, and I think this might actually talk about Hinkley's view on playing your first team, and unfortunately it's something that we last saw under Choco, where he had his guys and he will invest everything in them because he has faith in them to perform. And quite honestly, Tom Janus, under Hinkley, he's been one of those guys, and I suppose we knew he wasn't going to learn anything at NFL level, so he's got to come back to the top level. And Cleary's out, and I'm sure Cleary understands. He knows he's not first in line or second in line or third in line. On a good day when everyone's vaguely on form, he's definitely fourth in line. So maybe it's as simple as that, and that Hinkley's putting faith in the defence that he wanted at the start of the year, and he's giving them a chance to perform now that they're all back together again, I suppose.
I could understand Cleary getting dropped if we were facing a team which had just the two tall forwards, maybe like Essendon or someone like that. Then I would say, fair enough, horses for courses. He's unlucky he misses out because, Holmes shouldn't trend over ahead of him in the pecking order. Fair enough. But when you're facing Jeremy Cameron and Jonathan Patton and Cameron McCarthy, and the likelihood of arresting Ruckman up there as well, which GWS have done quite a lot in recent times, it's just a baffling decision to drop a key defender who was best on ground last week and have us go up undermanned in defence. I just don't understand it. I don't know who Janus is going to play on, to be honest. I'm not really sure there's a fine matchup for him. I really don't know which one of those 4 players that he's going to play on.
I think that's what it comes down to, though, is that we're talking about team defence. And if you want to talk about putting big bodies back there, I think that off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that every one of those key forwards you named is taller than their equivalent defender in Port Adelaide. So it's not going to be about the height. It's going to be about the supply and controlling that and controlling the territory. So for that sort of thing, you generally want an experienced player. Homch has got that, Trengo's got that, Jonas has got that, and we've obviously got we've got the 3 halfbacks again now. We've got Cam O'Shea, Jasper Puttard, Nathan Cracker, Matthew Broadbent. It's pretty clear, I think, in that respect, how we're intending to have our defence plan. That is to cut off territory and rebound and not worry so much about them taking marks against us in the forward line, because we're hoping that they won't have the opportunity to. We'll frustrate their supply and then frustrate their ability to be in the right position. And you don't need height for that, you just need body. And I suppose that is possibly the one area where Jonas has an edge on Cleary, is just the ability to be a bit of a pain in the arse and get in the way.
Yeah.
But we've got an overloaded backline, basically. We're bringing in Cracker on top of keeping Broadbent and Pittard. And keeping O'Shea in as well. We are absolutely set to intercept and rebound and cut off as much as possible. We're going to see, in full force, we're going to see the halfback attack essentially from us this week. This is the most we've had all year, I think, in terms of that sort of halfback attack.
We've got Impey and Janus on the bench at the moment as well, so we're essentially playing 8 defenders, which is a little bit baffling as well. But maybe we'll see Impey play out forward. Maybe we might see Cracker play out forward as well. You never know.
Yeah, maybe. I think they'll play in defence. I think we'll just have a very defensive game from our perspective.
Lots of wing backs.
Lots of wing backs, and Monfrey's back in also gives us that option to just have hardly anyone in the forward line and just try and run it in, which we don't like watching, but it's what we do.
Yeah. We've seen Gus Monfries have a massive game in the SANFL last week. I think he had 26 touches and 4 goals. Do we think he'll play more of an attacking, aggressive game this week, or do we think he'll play his usual sort of defensive job on Heath Shaw?
I think he'll have an opportunity to be attacking, but I don't think it'll be leading from the forward line to the midfield. I think it'll probably be the old trick of sort of starting around the defensive side of half forward and then trying to run onto the ball as it gets kicked forward from a long way back. With that number of defenders, like we discussed, that means there's going to be a high proportion of Port Adelaide players in that defence, which means our forward line is going to have a lot of space to work in if the matchups are good. And I think that's where he's going to be used, basically, just running into space like he has done in the past. And I suppose like we've seen with Port Adelaide sides for a long time, going back to Tay Cockatoo Collins from memory. So, we'll see how that goes. Janus?
I'm just anyway. Yeah.
I was talking too fast.
I would. Yeah. Actually, it's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, I can't see Monfries going back to that defensive lockdown role. I don't know. You would like to think that he's got more strings to his bow than just doing that. I know he's been good at it this season, but he was dropped because he's not producing numbers.
Yep.
So maybe going back into the SNFL has woken him up to realise the fact that he's not getting any younger and he needs to pull his finger out, I guess, and do more than just defending as a forward. So if we're going to do, as Portia says, put him and make him run from the back lines into the midfield, kind of like Chad Wingard does, I guess. He goes into the backs and does that sort of like pushes through and links up and stuff. When he's doing that thing, if they could swap those two players together, I can see that working, like Wingard and Monfries sort of like swapping back and forth. But yeah, I would hope that he would have more of an influence over a young GWS than just having to lock down Heath Shaw and take him out of the game.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I guess the next player to talk about is Matthew Lobe, who's been omitted. Some would say that's a good thing. Some would say it's too little too late, I guess, in terms of a selection thing. So we're going back to our old structure from last year with just the one ruckman and the 2 tall forwards as well. Is this a good thing? Is Matty Lobe unlucky, or is this something that's been coming for a long time?
I think it's very much something that's been coming for a long time. We've talked basically about how he's almost turned into Steve McKee pretty much, just being a body in the midfield that's quite tall and gets in the way, which he's done most of the year, I think. He's had a few good things, but that's pretty much it. So there's not a lot of room for Steve McKee in a side.
Steve McKee, that's going back. That's a good call, actually. He has played very, very similar to Steve McKee this year.
Yeah, well, extremely. I mean, we talked about him being a negating ruckman, effectively, and that's what he's sort of turned into because he hasn't really been getting effective taps to the extent that we'd want, and he's not a marker, except when we all go, oh my God, he marked. He's not got a lot of strings to his bow. If it's because he's got an injury or something, that's absolutely fine, but we just don't need him in the side in that form. Just got to hope that we've got ruckman that can sort of come along and fill in eventually.
Yeah, if he's not taking marks or doing anything up forward in terms of like providing a presence up there like Ryder does, then he's pretty much useless to our structure going forward because he doesn't have that extra string to his bow that's going to make him an automatic selection, which is a shame because I think Ken really likes him in terms of his tactical nous and stuff, right? I think because I remember when he was coming back into the side, King goes, "Oh, I love having Lowe's back because he's like another captain or is another tactician on the field. He can point and show people where to go and whatever." But for whatever reason, maybe he's been concentrating on that too much this year, and rather than actually concentrating on his own game and making sure that he's doing that properly. I don't know, but yeah, unless he's going. Sorry.
No, I kind of think he was one of those character recruits that we like to do in that everything you hear about Matthew Lobby says that he's an absolutely serious hard worker. And it's really hard for a coach to not appreciate that, I think, when they've got something they want to communicate. So I think that's probably a large part of why Hinckley is generally willing to back him in. And certainly everything, he says you get what you deserve. And I think that he kind of feels that if you work hard, then obviously you probably deserve a bit of a shot. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Maybe we're looking at what the side's going to be like if we trade him out for Charlie Dixon.
Well, that was my next question. Is his spot on the list actually in danger? If we do end up landing Charlie Dixon, is there a spot for Matthew Lobby in the power lineup next year?
I can't imagine why there wouldn't be. Really, we have shown again this year that we need multiple ruckmen. Redden not being available most of the year is that's basically what's caused us having such a loyalty to Lobby is the fact that we haven't really had options. So I don't think you could argue that it's a good idea to not keep options if we're talking about, just moving on for a crappy pick. If it was part of the Dixon trade, yeah, okay, but I can't see why we wouldn't want to keep Lobby. We'd certainly still need to have a reasonable offer for him, though obviously his form this year would make any offers pretty small. But I don't see that it threatens his spot. It probably threatens Redden's spot, but maybe, I don't know. Hard to say.
If we get Dixon and Schultz stays, does that put Lobby's spot under question?
No, because it's not. They don't play ruck. I mean, not really.
Dixon.
Are you talking?
Yeah,
best
no, but
22?
we need a key ruckman, like the main ruckman. It's okay to have an alternate. We've got a couple of alternates, but you still need a guy that they're a ruckman. That's what they're there for. I don't know. I feel that anyway.
That's what Patrick Ryder is.
You talking best 22? Or
I'm
on the
talking
list?
about on the list. Like, if we get Dixon, is trading Matthew Lobby something that might actually happen?
It could happen, but I would not say that the bringing on of Dixon is what will precipitate that. I think we can have both.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. That's fair enough. Have we missed the boat by not bringing in someone like Frampton this week or Harvey for a debut?
I think it's pretty clear that Ken wants to win this week. Whether it's because it's something that he just wants to do for general principle or if he wants to make a big focus of winning home games. Because I think Archie got his debut away from Adelaide as well, and there's probably a lot of them that do. I don't know whether it's just that focus on we want to win at home. That'll keep the crowds happy. It'll keep the memberships rolling in next year. A lot of teams have done worse than to try and win every game at home. So I think it's just that we really want to win this week. But next week, we away next week. If we're away next week, we might get a shot then, I guess. I don't know.
Against Hawthorn.
Yeah, why not? Okay, maybe not. But how good would that be for a first game, though?
Yeah, 165 points. Bring it on. Let's ask Johnny Butcher how he feels about playing Hawthorn away in a first game.
Yeah, fair enough.
Speaking of which, Johnny Butcher is one of the emergencies. And look, we've spoken a lot about the defence so far this podcast, but do we see the possibility of Johnny Butcher being a late inclusion into the team as that fourth tall defender or third tall defender?
I don't think it matches the rest of the team, which we've already said we're trying to go for pace, and I'm not sure that he's got the pace and, more importantly, the composure to perform when he's at pace.
Yeah. You could say that, like, if it happens, you wouldn't be overly shocked, but I couldn't see it happening.
I'd be pretty shocked.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd be absolutely shocked. I'm going to be shocked if he plays again this year. I'm going to be shocked if he plays another game for Port Adelaide, quite frankly, and I think everyone kind of should be. Yeah, if he's only getting games this time of year, his place on the list is very weak, unlike Lobby. I would say that he's very much in trade bait land at this point, and yeah, if he gets a game, I'll be amazed, honestly, absolutely.
Yep. So where to now for Andrew Moore and Aaron Young?
I don't know what happened with Youngie. I think he's still got a good amount of potential. More, I'd love to see if we could get anything for him, but I doubt we can. I know that every year... I know last year Rick was very keen on trading out Young, and that might have actually been the time. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. It's worth keeping on the list because he's a fringe player. We won't get much for him, and there are other players that we could delist if we're going to give people away for nothing.
I don't think I think Young has an extra year in his contract, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
that simplifies it.
yeah, the only thing I can think of with Aaron Young, a lot of people think I don't actually like him. I actually really like him as a player, but I just think he's just got that, I don't know, that malaise of, near enough being good enough. And you could just, sometimes he needs to be on the edge basically all the time. So possibly you could do an Adam Kingsley to him and sort of say, well, drop him to the rookie list for a year and say, well, this show us that you can actually work hard and, get there and take the opportunity when it comes to you. Because he did it against North Melbourne, had a fantastic game, but then steadily since after that, it just dropped off every single time until he was out of the team, and you want him to be improving every single game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that Adam Kingsley was a very different sort of case, though, because he'd already won best and fairest, He'd had a pretty good career before he had his big dip and then got that nasty shock, whereas Young is just really someone that he didn't have to work as hard as Kingsley did to get in the side. Like Kingsley, we recruited as a mature player, effectively, from Essendon reserves.
Yeah.
And so he already had a taste of, gosh, this is what life without football's like, whereas Aaron Young's never had that. And I think that's the key ingredient as to what made Adam Kingsley really come back and work his ass off. And it's certainly what's happened with Nathan Cracker as well. when he drafted him, he was just like, oh yeah, 18-year-old, why not? Let's have a go. And now he's come back and he's pretty determined because he knows what it's like not having football when the best thing you do is football. So it's hard to do it with a young player that were drafted at 18 and he stayed on the list.
And here endeth Portia's Adam Kingsley lecture.
I could go more.
One of your favourite topics and players, good old Kinger. Bomb scare himself.
Oh, good old bomb scare. He was the best. Adam Kingsley's the player I hold up when anyone criticises me of not liking halfback flankers.
Makes Cam O'Shea look super composed back there sometimes.
Oh, well, let me just make this clear. Cam O'Shea is super composed back there sometimes. Absolutely.
True.
That
is true.
Yes.
So what are we expecting the outcome for this game? Are we expecting a win? Is it going to be a tough game?
I think this is the game where we see if Leon Cameron can coach. Because I think we've stated very clearly with our selections how we're going to play, and so he's basically been told, here, we're Port Adelaide, you know how we play. We've selected so that we're super going to play that way. What are you going to do about it? And if he can't do something about it, then he's nothing as a coach, I would say. We've laid all our cards on the table, so it's up to him to produce and up to him to get his side to produce. So I think that from a coaching perspective, I think he's got a lot on the line this week, even if he doesn't realise it. I think Port probably not so much, but we'll see. So I'm expecting it to be... I think it's going to be a coach's game, really. The players will do their bit, obviously, but I think it's going to come down to who is delivering their message best to their players. So it'll be interesting, and I think there'll probably be a few good shots of coaches in the box this week.
Yeah, we'll see if the people on the forum who consider themselves to be coaches and know what the team, or know what's wrong with the team, what should be happening. We'll see if they can show Ken exactly what he should have been doing if it didn't work out the way it's supposed to. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does. And look, as I said before, I mean, they really do need to win this week if they are to maintain a chance of making the finals. I mean, you would expect the Crows to win, you'd expect Richmond to win. Geelong play Hawthorn. I mean, that's probably their chance to maybe step above them into ninth spot on the ladder, and give themselves a bit of a chance of making the finals for the first time.
Yeah. I don't think they've got a great chance of that. But, yeah, they've certainly got more on the line than we do. But, of course, that can be a huge strength. When you don't have anything on the line, you've got nothing to fear. If that's the reason why you're missing out, it's just that high expectation and no one's got expectations of you anymore, then, yeah, you can certainly perform. So I think we're certainly the danger side to them. And I would love to know if they are hungry enough to really try and push us down, but I don't think they are. And also,
they've got Carlton and Melbourne in the last two games, so there is a chance there that they can actually still make the finals. They do play Sydney next week, so I don't know, maybe a shock win there might put them in the box seat.
Yeah, it would be a real shock win, because I think Sydney are very territorial, and I think they love nothing better than trying to beat the crap out of GWS, even though they're not really a major threat. But just because they want to stamp that the Sydney is still their city forever and ever, amen, basically. But Carlton, I don't know if that's going to be an easy one for them. I think they're playing certainly better than they were at the start of the year. And, I think they've got a little bit more to play for. Certainly with the coaches, got a little bit more to try and prove in the side, so that's good. Melbourne, they can probably beat Melbourne. Let's be realistic.
GWS has more to play for in terms of finals and stuff, but I think we've got just as much in terms of just pride in the performance and, I don't know, showing something to give the supporters hope that this year isn't going to be such a how can I put it? Like, not such a waste in terms of they've actually, you can see something to look forward to for the next season. That's what I'm looking forward to for these next 4 games. There's got to be something that, and I guess that's the reason why people are saying, we should pick, Frampton or Harvey or whoever. They want to get some sort of hope, just like we played John Butcher those games when he debuted in, when was it? 2011. 11, yeah. Same sort of thing. And it was a crap season, but at least we've got this happening. Well, what I want to see is it was a crap season, but at least we've learnt from it and actually started to, at least we can still be a team that's probably going to be up there pretty soon in terms of competing for a flag and stuff. And hopefully we're still around in our premiership window when they're coming up as well. So you want to keep those particular teams, I don't know, get some sort of wood on them, I guess. You know what I'm trying to say? But
I think that's not necessarily... I don't think that really holds true, that it's something that really carries over into finals in any case. Like, haven't we beaten North Melbourne in finals pretty much exclusively? It's good, but the finals is always different to the regular season, and all the hoodoos change and everything. But as far as doing changes to give the side hope and hoping that the players will play to give the crowd hope, I really hope that's not a concern for them. I think that the best reason to play guys like Frampton is because it's just good list management to turn the unknowns into quantifiables by playing a couple of the young blokes, so you know where your list is at when you're going into the list change period, basically. I think that's really, it's very cynical and it's kind of boring, but I think that's the reason why you bring players in, so you can see if they are capable of those things you didn't know before now, such as are they able to keep up with the pace of the game? Are they able to follow what's happening? Is something that they can overcome? Are their weaknesses exposed in a particular way that we can therefore train for in future seasons? There's lots of really practical reasons to play young blokes at this time of year, and hope is not really one of them. I really would hope. I would really hope that they're not doing it for that reason. If they do it, it's great and it's nice for fans, but it's more important for fans to think that their side is being managed well, and I think that's really what it's got to come down to. But certainly if we get to the end of the year and we haven't played any young blokes and we've lost the next, 3-4 games, then we should be pretty angry.
Yeah. Well, look, as I said on the forum during the week, it's hard to really know what to take out of this year. Obviously, we were one of the premiership favourites. We're not going to make the finals. That's super disappointing in itself. But probably the more disappointing thing for me is that we haven't really had any of our sort of second or third string stand up and become a regular part of the team. Just about every single player that we've got who's on that sort of fringe has played good games and poor games. They haven't cemented themselves in the side. I'm talking about guys like Kane Mitchell, Sam Gray, Jakey Need, Cam O'Shea, Paul Stewart, Andrew Moore, Brendan Archie, Carl Amon. They've all showed glimpses, but none of them have really taken their chance. And this was probably a year, given how poor we've been, where you really want one or two of those guys to stand up and say, hey, we're going to be long-term AFL players, and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with that, unfortunately. I actually was sorting through some old Port Adelaide stuff the last couple of weeks, and unfortunately didn't keep it around with me. It's been packed away again. But I read a Magpie News from 1986, and it had a really great column from John Wood talking about the problems with the Port Adelaide side and how the players are sort of losing focus in games and they're very frustrated. And that was in 1986. So if you want to look at whether the current form is something that's going to be a predictor of our future premiership form, then honestly, I read in 1986 is almost identical to now. So we're coming into one of the best premiership runs of a lifetime, I would have thought. I think that this is the sort of thing that you're going to see with a side that's developing. And as much as we're not one of the youngest sides in the AFL anymore, I think that we're still certainly on the rise. We do have some structural weaknesses in our side, and I think if we did get Charlie Dixon going back on that could solve one of them, certainly the biggest one. And apart from that, if we have a decent forward line set up, then it's really just about accessorising it with players that you can get very cheaply through trade and free agency. So, I take a lot of I take this performance this year with a grain of salt. I think it's just one of those inconsistencies you're going to see. For another example, I suppose, would be Brisbane Lions, or Brisbane Bears, I suppose I should say. 1996 was it that they finished in the prelim? Was it 96 or 95?
Yep, 96.
Yeah, and 96, and then they merged with Fitzroy and sort of tanked and were kind of rubbish, and then they went into an absolutely glory run. So I think it's a common thing to see among future premiership sides. Geelong, another one, when they had their shitty year when they got Joel Selwood right before they had their glory run, where they were just super inconsistent, but you could see some good things coming on. I'd love to see a couple more good things coming on from us this year to really say that we're in that sort of boat, but this is really, I haven't seen anything this year that hasn't told me that we are still kind of on track for a potential top 4 premiership run. So I think that's something to take out of the season.
I mean, I think that probably making the finals in 2013 and 2014 the way we did, with pretty much, we didn't really have that many injuries. Like, we had a few, but when we did, we managed to get through it, and splutter through it. And then when we got all our full complement back, we had a good run. I think that might have actually hindered us a little bit in terms of our list development, because it didn't expose our depth to any sort of games. So that's the sort of things that they're doing now. So they've had 2 years of pretty much doing nothing because the first team's been there all the time. And then the first team this year has been playing poorly, and these guys have been brought in to say, oh, well, let's see what you can do. But they're like, well, hang on, these guys are playing poorly too, and you're expecting me to do something fantastic, but I'm only pick 30 or whatever. Whereas if we had gone from a more of a, I guess, a slow linear progression from 2012 to 2013 to like finished like 13th, 14th, something like that, you know, and then the next year made finals and then gone up that way, you would have got the lower draft picks that you needed to improve your depth, you know?
Yeah. I think that if you're looking through the history of premiership sides, I don't think any of them, I reckon there would be not a single one that had a linear progression year to year from bottom to premiership. They all have ups and downs. West Coast is commonly seem to have those really what the fuck's going on years, and then they have their premiership years, and there's not much in between. So I don't think we can expect that sort of linear progression as much as it seems logical, because I suppose advances come in leaps and bounds, like technology and all the other things, inventions, basically. When you've got an edge, and you can exploit it for everything it's worth. And when you don't have an edge, you've got nothing. And it's particularly in a talented, competitive elite competition. So, I think we will always see ups and downs, and I think this has just been one of the downs while we, as you say, hopefully develop the list a bit better, get better at what we're doing, and retool for the next attempted premiership run with a slightly, hopefully, revised game plan. And hopefully more sturdy.
That's what happened with West Coast in, like, was it 2010 that they made the prelim or something like that? And they just lost it to Collingwood or whatever it was. And then they had injuries and people didn't play, like Hearn got injured and Natanui was out for a bit. And, you know, and then look at them now, like that's within, 3 years or 4 years or whatever. Same sort of thing that happens. They just regenerate their list and then come back and then everyone's like, oh, wow, look at West Coast, look how good they are. Well, even with the key defenders out and stuff. So you're right, it doesn't happen on a linear progression. I'm just saying that in a perfect world it would, but you take your advantages when you can. I think.
I mean, Hawthorn's 2008 is probably an example of linear progression. I mean, they didn't really have any down spot, but then the 08 premiership was a bit of a surprise, I guess, from where Hawthorn came from. And maybe North Melbourne 96. I don't think they really had any sort of drop off. They were sort of consistently almost there, and then just managed to go the next step the next year. But I do agree. I mean, success isn't linear, and these sort of down spots are almost expected sometimes. But I guess it depends how we come out of this year, and that's probably why it's so disappointing that we haven't had any of the young guys really sort of stand up and make a real name for themselves. Outside of maybe Cleary, who looks like he's ready to play regular AFL footy. Cracker's come in and shown that he can play AFL footy as well. But you look back to 2000 when we had our really bad year after we made the finals in 99, and we had Chad Corns play 21 games. Yep. We had Josh Carr play 14 games. Matty Bishop came to the club and played 14 games. Brent Guerra played 10. Polton played 20, and they all became fairly regular players over that sort of successful period.
Yep, no, absolutely. I don't think we haven't had a lot of list change, I suppose, since last year. Realistically, brought in Ryder, and that's about it. So, I guess in that respect, we haven't really added to our list depth at all, really, this year. But who knows? This off-season might be the year we do it. I guess that after trading away draft picks, we probably want to keep some or even get some, and that can bring change, I suppose, with it. But I think if we did get Charlie Dixon, then we'd be doing sort of what we did under Choco, where we're trading the future for now. And I'm really worried about the fact that you can trade future year draft picks. I think that's going to be a huge mistake from the AFL. I think it's going to be a phenomenally bad idea. And I really hope we don't get sucked into doing it.
It's going to be interesting. I guess I really just hope that this year we would have seen bang, Aaron Young, 22 games, regular AFL performer. Jakey Need after his finals last year. He come on and maybe be a 30-goal a year forward. Cam O'Shea get some consistency to his game. Brennan Archie maybe play 15 or 16 games. Andrew Moore, look like the player that we all really, really hoped that he would become, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But it just hasn't happened. So hopefully next year, some of these guys in the off season will realise that success can't be taken for granted. You do actually have to work really hard for it every single year, and hopefully we can come back.
Yeah, hopefully. I think that a lot of the things stopping players like Aaron Young playing 20 games is we haven't just stuck with them. We've brought in we keep a lot of backups for positions that I argue we don't really need backups. And I'm going to say it anyway. Paul Stewart, classic example. We could have put more games into Young, even if he was maybe not entirely deserving of them, but we started bringing in old guys that are not going to really do much. Tom Logan's been the guy we've used that for in the past, and the only way you get a side full of young blokes that are all getting a lot of experience up quickly is if you don't keep around the just-in cases that are over 25 and have limited upside, and especially you don't play them. So I think that's a list management issue as much as anything as to why certainly those opportunities aren't necessarily there for young players to come in and do that, because when you have the older players on your list, it's really, really tempting every week to pick them. Just for that slight bit more experience and that slightly level ahead. I think that's a crutch that we certainly are in a position that we should be trying to avoid it at this point.
Yeah, you don't want to overrate consistency over talent or skill level.
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's what we do quite a bit. We've got to keep an eye on potential in future years. Like it's good for the coach to be the chief selector and pick for this week, but there needs to be an element in there that sort of talks about what are we going to do the next year, the year after that, and that also forms part of selection, I feel, and I don't know if our structure supports that. I don't know. But back when the coach had control over recruitment, I suppose, to a large extent as well, then there was probably a bit more focus on lists being managed that way, and I don't know if that's the modern style. So I don't know whether it's a flaw or if I'm just reading this wrong.
So you mentioned the potential for clubs to trade future draft picks, which seems like it's going to come in or has been accepted as coming in. So what are your opinions on that, Portia?
I think it's a really bad idea, because what it's going to do is it's going to... Okay, right now, before this rule comes in, if we want to say, we need Patrick Ryder, and then Essendon say, we want 10 billion draft picks, and we say, we don't have them, mate. Take what you get. They'll now say, we'll give you your next year ones. And we certainly, sure as hell, don't want to give up our next year ones just to get a guy like Patrick Ryder, as much as he's a good player. So it's given, I suppose, sellers more things that they can demand from the people they're trading with. So that's a concern for a club that's wanting to pick up players. And I suppose the other real issue I see going forward is the fact that some clubs will do it. So Essendon the classic example back in the day when Essendon managed to trade off Danny Jacobs to Hawthorn for pick 6 in the draft or something horrible. We'll see horribly one-sided trades where a bottom feeder club right down the bottom, like I'm talking about D's sort of thing, where they want to bring in their big name recruit and they'll trade all their future draft picks and this year's draft picks. They'll get their one recruit, they'll be okay, and then their list will just go to shit because they don't have the young blood coming in that they need to have come in. And so they'll finish down the bottom, we'll go back to priority pick land, except the priority pick will only be replacing their normal picks, and we'll see any flaws in list management at any given club being superbly, enormously exposed to a larger extent than they can possibly be right now, with a longer period in which they would need to hold steady and try to recover, because instead of waiting 1 year for next year's draft picks, they're going to have to wait 2 years for their first round draft pick after a bad trade. And bad trades will always happen. So I think it's a bad idea. I think that it's going to cause bad teams to make bad errors, and it's going to cause aggressive traders to get everything they want.
Nice.
Well said, Janus.
Sorry.
Do you want to follow up on that?
How could you argue with that? You couldn't argue with that. You can imagine a coach who's under the pump. They need to make a big splash the next year, and they're like, need to get memberships, and the CEO's down there. Let's go for Jeremy Cameron or something like that. Okay, we'll trade our first round draft pick from this year and next year, and then GWS has 2 draft picks both year, and they become more powerful in this other club, and then the guy does his knee or something like that. I can just imagine that sort of stuff happening. The only reason why it works in a in places like the NFL draft and things like that, which is probably where they're looking at, is they've got the ability to trade all the way up to selection. So you can
Yeah, that's right.
change things around. Like if you say, oh, this person's taken this, oh, this player's still available, let's make it a deal with this thing. These guys need this guy more. You know what I mean? It's like that movie Draft Day with Costner, same sort of thing. If you could do something like that and get like 3 first-round draft picks or something like that, that'd be good. But you can't do that sort of stuff.
The other thing the NFL has that's really important that could improve this is that they have conditional picks that you can trade. So, for example, you trade a player to a club and they'll say, okay, we'll give you a first-round pick for him straight up. And then if he plays 20 games in this year, we'll give you a second-round pick. If any plays 5 games because he's crap, we'll give you a fourth-round pick or something like that. So it's a conditional trade stated up front. And that protects you to some extent from those sort of horror trades where we talk about, you recruit the best player in the league and then they break their leg and they're out for 2 seasons, because obviously that conditional pick will be practically nothing if there's anything at all if you organise that sort of trade. That is a sort of complexity that the AFL should be looking at adding, because it enables trades that are more resistant to risk, and that is certainly a problem in the AFL right now. Is just that resistance to risk where a club will trade you a Nathan Thompson that's got depression and not tell you, and then you are screwed. Yeah.
You wonder why they brought it in, particularly this year. Like, what was the particular reason they said, oh, yeah, we're going to bring in future draft pick training, which is what lots of people have been asking for a long time now. I mean, obviously they probably want more the NFL version of it to come in, but is it because GWS is like starting to lose players now, and they're guys like is it Law that's going this year, or everyone's talking about? Was it him?
Most likely.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, GWS, he's worth 2 first-round draft picks, and people say, well, we don't have them, and especially clubs like Hawthorn or Collingwood or whoever, no one's going to want to facilitate a trade just to get them to get other draft picks and stuff. So, but I don't know. I think you could probably, if you're a premiership side, you could probably clean up, because you could say, oh, look at this premiership best 22 player, he played in our premiership. Oh, that's worth 2 first-round draft picks to some club like Melbourne or Gold Coast or whoever, you know what I mean? But the lesser clubs won't be able to do that, unfortunately. So
I think it's probably just a case of the AFL bowing down to the AFLPA once again. I think it's probably the Players Association that has helped push this through. I think you look at situations like Daniel Gorringe last year, who we were trying very hard to get, but we didn't have the picks. If we were able to trade a second-round pick from 2016 draft, the trade would have been done. Gorringe would have got what he wanted. The AFL would have been happy. Both clubs would have been happy. In the end, the trade didn't happen. Gorringe was drastically upset, and it's just bad PA for the AFL, I think. So I think it's probably the AFL Players Association that has really helped push this through to try and get those trades where a player is adamant that they want to go, but maybe all the tools aren't there for the trade to actually happen. Now there's really probably no excuse for these sorts of trades to get done.
That's probably the reason why they've said you can either trade your first-round draft pick next year or your second and third rounders, but you can't do all of them. Yeah. So it's like a case of, with those players who are on the fringe and stuff, but they're worth maybe a third rounder or a second rounder, and you don't have them anymore, we can get them. And then if you really want to make a blockbuster deal and get yourself a Jeremy Cameron, for example, then you can say, well, I'll give you pick 7 and pick our first-round draft pick for next year, and do it that way, because you think you're that close to a flag based on that particular player. But
or if that's probably
dangerous.
something that you do. I mean, you give up pick 2 this year and pick 4 next year for Jeremy Cameron, and you do it, and GWS would be laughing all the way to the bank.
I think that the other thing I think it comes back to the GWS losing players, and I suppose Gold Coast losing players thing mostly, because all that's going to happen in some respects is that you always keep next year's first-round draft pick around. So after this first year, everyone, yes, absolutely, this year, right now, this very season, everyone has a first-round pick this year available and a first-round pick next year available. But next year, players can name a specific side, and they might have traded their pick for next year already this year. And so we're still back in that exact same situation where GWS is losing a player to, I don't know, Melbourne next year, and Melbourne's already traded this year's first-round draft pick away and next year's draft round pick away. So all they've got is a future year's draft pick, which is even worse than if they've only had this year's, because then GWS would have to wait a year. So
and then old mate
it's a
Gill
really
comes over the top.
short-term solution.
Yes, and then old mate Gill comes over the top and says, "Oh, I'll give you a priority pick since you don't have any left." At your discretion and stuff. That's how it works.
It's. Yeah. I kind of feel like I don't know a lot about Mark Evans, but everything he says just seems to be complete and utter tripe. And it doesn't seem like he considers the impact of the things he suggests in his media releases. And I think this is probably related to those in that he hasn't really thought about the complexity of the rules he's introducing and what impact they're going to have, not just on players, but also on clubs and the management of clubs. And I don't think has been thought through. And I'm very unimpressed.
Another thing across the AFL that I want to quickly touch on is the Adam Cooney suspension. He got suspended for 1 week for a very hard head-eye bump on Stephen Cornelio from GWS. What are your thoughts on that suspension? Because it looked, he went straight to the tribunal. The board didn't rate it. They just sent him straight to the tribunal. For some reason, they went to Rodney Eade and got a character reference, which I didn't even know was possible for tribunal cases, and he only gets 1 week. And you look at something like Tommy Jonas a couple of years ago when he nailed Dylan Robertson from St Kilda, and he got 3 weeks for that, and this was almost identical.
Well, I think anyone that's seen the footage knows that Cooney should be going for a lot more than a week. I can't think of any reason why it would be less than that, and the idea that a character reference would even be accepted is laughable. It really should be like, yeah, thanks, mate, not interested. Because what has character reference got to do with it? It's completely irrelevant. It's supposed to be based on past record, which should be clear through actual suspension records, and it should be based on the incident itself. So the fact that it's even admitted is an absolute shambles and a complete embarrassment to the AFL. And then obviously the result itself is quite embarrassing, but I suppose we're getting used to that from tribunal decisions. It certainly hasn't changed in the last, however long we've been in the league and the AFL. And it's an absolute shambles.
Janus?
The whole thing's a joke.
Sorry.
You could not justify any other result than him getting at least like 3 weeks or something like that for that sort of hit, you know what I mean? But again, then you have a look at players like Lance Franklin when they do their thing and they just kind of get a week for what they do, you know? But then other players get more, I don't know, maybe it was some sort of like, oh, well, this happens, you know, and it's the MRP is not that bad, you know what I mean? Kind of like a stick up for what the tribunal the match review panel is doing, rather than actually judging the case on merit, rather than anything else. And they say they don't look at precedents, but I reckon they do. In terms
you have to. If they looked at precedent, he would have got 3 games or 2 games.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hard enough. Cornelio's missing this week. I mean, it's a serious thing that happened. It's just another example of the AFL making complete and utter fools of themselves.
It's a kangaroo.
Look, I don't think Portia's coming back. There's some sort of technical issues which is causes her line to drop out here. So I guess we will say farewell right now. Janus, thanks for coming on, buddy.
It was a pleasure as always.
Indeed. Portia, thanks for coming on. Oh, thanks, Macca. That's wonderful. I'll speak to you next week. And on that note, Carn the pair.
Carn the power.
Carn the pair.
What a handball from...
Could be a catastrophic error. And Wingard can make it really, really sting. It's there, Wingard from the dead pocket.